Well, hello and good morning. Let us take a look at the top stories that has appeared on the newspapers today. We in fact have a series of papers that we are looking into, and of course this is not to pass any kind of judgment on the kind of coverage that we are having on these newspapers, but to actually bring you up to date with the kind of coverage that is there on the newspapers, giving you different angles about stories, and of course we have a list of it today. But topping that particular list, of course it's for you also, Nancy, that 454 versus 2 in when it comes to the passing of the Women's Reservation Bill, but if it is effective only from post 29, that is 2029, you will have to wait to see what are the actual counters of this reservation bill. And of course there's the issue about the OBC quota that has been raised by the opposition, and how whether it can be accommodated, not accommodated, it's another debate by itself. Then what are the counters going to be about? There are several aspects of that article that has been put, and yesterday, interestingly enough, they also had this huge debate over the credit war as to who is responsible for bringing this kind of a bill. And then suddenly we have a history of it saying that, you know, from Rajiv Gandhi's dream to H.D. Devegowda introducing, getting lapped, then the Congress introduced it in 2008 and couldn't push it through because SP and RJD were against it. And then now finally the BJP is trying to push it as fast as possible. But then it looks like the complications of getting that particular reservation in place is going to be there. So what are the people saying on that big momentous occasion? Well, 454 versus 2. Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, well, I was reading about it here only, and they're all talking about that, you know, how the credibility issue was there, how the OBC quota, why the reservation for the quota is necessary. Then we had a very interesting discussion on the delimitation process as well, that how is it going to affect, you know, the influence of particular, you know, states in the Lok Sabha, especially the South Indian states. So we were talking about it, and I heard Sonia Gandhi's speech and then Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary's speech, and he said that, you know, Rajiv Gandhi was the one who implemented the bill. Sonia Gandhi also said it is going to be a dream come true for Rajiv Gandhi. And then Amit Shah comes out and he says, why are you being so hypocritic, because now you are that opposing the OBC quota. If you think about what Rajiv Gandhi proposed, he also ignored the OBC quota. So what is the debate about? And I saw it coming, you know, the fight over the credit of the bill, because it's a historic bill. It's been stuck for 27 years. A lot of governments came, a lot of government tried to implement the bill, even though, you know, there were discussion about it, there was some confusion about the details. There is still some confusion about, you know, the government still needs to iron out the details, that how are they going to implement the bill, how are they going to talk about it. So that is something that they still need to figure out. But, you know, the most interesting thing that I found out of all of this was that the discussion around, you know, OBC women, the discussion around delimitation, the discussion about the demand of the caste census. You know, we were talking about it earlier with my colleagues as well, and everybody was like, India is the only country we're still dependent upon the 2011 census.
No, that decadal census is another aspect of it, and I think in the decadal census with the CAA and then the delimitation exercise is going to be a very complicated process. So it's going to be a long drawn out process. That's why we're looking at probably 2029.
I mean, but it does raise this question whether, you know, the government will be able to implement this bill or not, because, you know, it's a big process, it's a long process, and we have invited a lot of women to come and celebrate this, you know, this women reservation. You know,
interestingly enough, when we talk about the women's reservation bill, just like our founding fathers of our country and the constitution, the founding mothers of our country's constitution, as well as you know, people who we don't speak about, but even Sarojini Naidu had written a letter saying that opposing women's reservation, saying that we are equals, why do we require a reservation? But then the debate further went on, and probably a lot of people realized that in a patriarchy driven system in India's parliament, you're not going to get that equal status, and that's why people started pushing for the representation of women, and they found that they were highly underrepresented, and I think they're still underrepresented in the, you know, scheme of things. But then, you know, the question about whether there'll be a dual membership issue, that shouldn't be will it be on a rotation base, all those counters are still being, you know, looked into as to how it will affect parliamentary politics as a whole. But the fact remains is that at least it's passed in the Lok Sabha. And of course, the debate today will be in the Rajya Sabha. And the crucial question about OBC quota, which you had raised, this is what the Tribune has said. Why OBC quota in women's bill is a problem. What they've written over here is that even as opposition raises the pitch for OBC quota within the women's reservation bill, the constitution as it stands does not provide for political reservation to other backward classes, OBCs in the Lok Sabha or state assemblies. This is unlike the political reservation of 15% and 7.5% available to scheduled castes and scheduled tribes in the constitution. A look back at history of women's quota bill reveals Geeta Mukherjee led a joint parliamentary panel which examined the first draft tabled under then Prime Minister H.D. Deve Gowda in September 1996, recommended that reservation be, sorry I have to move to the page 11 because they have suddenly cut out on that article. So yeah, I was saying that it was, you know, an attempt was actually made during Prime Minister H.D. Deve Gowda's time, and okay, the House, where did it go? Why OBC quota is not possible. So this is what it says. It says, given to women from backward sections once the constitution is amended to permit OBC quota. The joint committee also recommended reservation for women in the Rajya Sabha and state legislative councils, which is not permitted by the constitution. The report with respect to OBC reservation was not heeded by any government that brought the women's quota bill after it lapsed with the dissolution of the 11th Lok Sabha in 1997. So basically they are saying there's no constitutional provision for an OBC quota, like an SC or an ST quota, and that is why the question still is being looked into. But the opposition has been trying to in fact play that OBC card. And we did see how, you know, Rahul Gandhi also tried to pitch in the OBC factor in this. Why is that the OBCs have been left out? So at the end of the day, it looks like it's going to be a little complicated issue when it comes to centering around OBCs, whether that will be possible in the near future. But the women's reservation bill seems to be starting on kind of caste politics itself. It says that now the question is, okay, you're getting it, but and then you have a quota within a quota, and then in that quota, how much will the OBCs in fact be considered? So that aspect of it seems to be limiting it completely.
I mean, I was reading about it, and it's just not the OBC quota. The delimitation process is also, you know, a big factor, because first you have to have the first you have to go through the process of census, then you have to go through the process of delimitation, because we are talking about amending the constitution here. So it's going to be a very long process, and you know, a lot of prominent, you know, women leaders pointed out that from the opposition that, you know, this like Moa Moitra, she came out and she said that this whole bill is a sham. Supriya Sule was also questioning about the timeline of the bill, that how is it possible, how are you going to implement it, it's going to be a long journey.
You know, a lot of people are trying to in fact connect census. Why is this bill connected with census? And because, you know, it's important to because there are so many layers to it. The bill has such a layers that, you know, when we talk about delimitation, when we talk about census, and I was reading it here that, you know, governments sensitive to South's concern on delimitation, even the government is considering that, because when you talk about Lok Sabha seats, you know, when there is going to be a reshuffling in the seats, there is going to be some limitation over the seats. So you know, it's very obvious that if a state doesn't have a proper population, and if I'm not wrong, there was this DMK MP, she came out and she said that, are we being you know, penalized, are we being punished? Kanimuri, she came out and she said that, am I being punished, are states being punished for controlling the population, because this is not something that the government needs to figure out. Because when it came up, that southern debate was actually going on, they were talking about almost, I think, 23%, 129 to 130 seats. In my rough calculation is what South India technically has when it comes to the parliamentary seats from 545. So in that way, it is almost around 24% of the you know, Lok Sabha seats that South India is having. So because of the population factor and delimitation exercise is being carried out, there is this question whether North is completely underrepresented and whether South is overrepresented. So there is possibility that Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Telangana could actually lose Lok Sabha seats, and that's not a good thing, because what happens is that already it has got its political undertones in the South, saying that it is being reduced like a Northeast without a voice. So that has already taken undercurrent, and regional parties are playing on those fears, saying that you will be marginalized. So that kind of fear is also being playing, and that's why I think the Prime Minister also came and saying that those concerns will be taken into account. They are seriously looking into it, because the Prime Minister also knows that this is not something that we can create a regional divide with, and it's going to be a very complicated exercise when I think when delimitation is going to be taken to effect as such.
I mean, I was reading a headline here. It says that PM times it right. Criticism fails to turn into opposition. So, in the parliament there has been, a lot of debates, and PM Modi just, went out and he just said so confidently, the God has chosen me to implement this bill. So that was something interesting, the way he just, came out that, of course, Prahlad Joshi, he gave a spoiler on the X, and he said that, only the Modi government had the courage to come out with the bill. But I think before the, 2024 elections, this women reservation bill and the way the Modi government timed it, they timed it so perfectly that after G20, it's a historic bill, it has been pending for 27 years. Now the opposition is coming out and saying, wait a minute, you cannot take the credit for it yet. There are still details that you need to figure out. There are still questions which are, remained unanswered. So you really need to, calm down and just before taking the credit.
Well, let's now take a look at some of the reactions coming in with regard to this. And of course, OIC was one of those persons who said no to the bill, saying that it is anti-Muslim and anti-OBC. So let's take a look at some of those reactions on that bill.
Elated and extremely grateful to the Honorable Prime Minister for not only helping in creating history, but a solution that women in our country were waiting for decades. What a better way to begin parliamentary innings for any parliamentarian than with the passage of a bill that scores of women were waiting for. It is yet to pass in the Rajya Sabha, I know, but as a Lok Sabha member, I am extremely privileged to have not only viewed history but also participate in the same. I today fondly recall the contributions of Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji, Sushma Swaraj ji, Sumitra Mahajan ji, Bal Apte ji, and I'm extremely grateful. दो स्वप्न अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी जी ने देखा, इस राष्ट्र की करोड़ों महिलाओं ने देखा, लोकसभा में आज उस स्वप्न को प्रधानमंत्री मोदी ने साकार किया है। संकल्प से सिद्धि की ओर लोकसभा में बिल का पारित होना पहला कदम है। अब हम बेसब्री से कल का इंतजार कर रहे हैं।
जी ऐतिहासिक दिन तो है, लेकिन महिला को क्या फायदा इसका हुआ जब पता ही नहीं कि अगले चुनाव में, अगले साल में, 5 साल में, 7 साल में ये आरक्षण का फायदा कब मिलेगा। तो ये बिल को लाने की ये जल्दी क्या थी। आप 10 साल नहीं लेके आए, जब आप ला सकते थे, अब लेके आए हैं। जब ये लागू नहीं हो सकता तो बिल पास हो गया है, लेकिन महिला को आरक्षण मिल गई, यहाँ कब पहुँचेगी उसकी कोई डेट नहीं दी है, कोई मैन्युफैक्चरिंग डेट नहीं है। आज मैन्युफैक्चर हो गया, एक्सपायरी डेट कोई नहीं है। ये बिल कब तक लटकते रहेगा। अगली सरकार बनेगी, वो क्या आके करेगी कुछ नहीं पता। कब जनगणना होएगी, कब डिलिमिटेशन होएगी, बैठे रहे।
मुझे लगता है जो महिलाओं ने आज तक का वेट किया है उसका फलित हुआ है और मोदी जी का पूरा क्रेडिट जाता है। तो हमारे सिकंदर तो मोदी जी हैं ये देश की महिलाओं के लिए। तो आज वो जीते हैं और उन्होंने महिलाओं की जीत में बहुत बड़ी भागीदारी लेकर ये बिल को लाया और पेश किया और पास भी हुआ। ये कॉन्फिडेंस हम लोगों को, सभी महिलाओं को था, अगर वो बिल लाते हैं तो ये पास जरूर होगा और मेजॉरिटी से ये बिल पास हुआ है। तो मुझे लगता है हमारे सभी महिलाओं की तरफ से मोदी जी का मैंने दिल से धन्यवाद अंदर पार्लियामेंट में भी किया और यहाँ पर भी करती हूँ।
बहुत ही ऐतिहासिक आज फैसला हुआ है और मैं यदि कहूं कि भारत के संसदीय इतिहास में यह स्वर्ण अक्षरों में लिखा जाएगा तो यह कहना बेअतिशयोक्तिपूर्ण नहीं होगा।
सभी राजनीतिक दलों ने इसमें सहयोग किया है, हम उनका धन्यवाद करते हैं, आभार प्रकट करते हैं और आशा करता हूं राज्यसभा में भी यूनानिमसली ये सर्वसम्मति से पास होगा और हम लोग इतिहास बना पाएंगे।
महिला आरक्षण विधेयक आज पास हो गया है। यह देशवासियों के लिए बहुत प्रसन्नता का क्षण है। विशेष रूप से देश की आधी आबादी महिलाओं को मैं बहुत बधाई देता हूं और प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी के साहस और नेतृत्व को बहुत बहुत हम लोग अप्रिशिएट करते हैं।
ऐतिहासिक बिल है, ऐतिहासिक क्षण है। प्रधानमंत्री मोदी जी को इस बात के लिए धन्यवाद कि 2014 से लगातार उनकी अनेक नीतियां ऐसी रही जो महिलाओं को सशक्त कराए भारत के अंदर। तो एक नया युग है, नए भारत की तैयारी है।
कोई आपत्ति नहीं थी, ये जुमलेबाजी है, यही आपत्ति है हमारे। सब सिर्फ जुमलेबाजी है। ये कब होगा, कैसे होगा, किसी को पता नहीं, क्योंकि ये सारे जो मुद्दे हैं अंदर जो देखेगा उसको पता चलेगा कब लिमिटेशन, कब सेंसस, कोई ठिकाना नहीं।
I think it's good. It's good that it's passed. We all had concerns that it's a bit of a jumla because the reference to delimitation and to census, neither of which have been scheduled, makes it very unclear when this will actually be implemented. And so it looks like they have passed a law to give them political credit for the elections, that they have done this, without any serious intention to implement it in any reasonable frame of time. That's the only problem. But the law itself at least is passed. It's a victory for those who have been looking for women to get a bigger voice in our legislatures.
बहुत हिस्टोरिक डे है, बहुत ही हिस्टोरिक डे है कि औरतों को भी बहुमत मिलेगी, वो संसद में आएंगी और मुल्क को और मजबूत करेंगी. ओबीसी को भी मिलना चाहिए और हर महिला को मिलना चाहिए.
जो हमारे पॉपुलेशन के 50% के ऊपर है, अभी लोकसभा में अदर बैकवर्ड क्लासेस सिर्फ 22% है और मुस्लिम महिलाओं को के लिए भी हमने अमेंडमेंट डाला था. अब सिर्फ 4% मुस्लिम महिला हैं, तो इनका रिप्रेजेंटेशन होना चाहिए ना. बिल लाने का मकसद क्या है कि उन लोगों को लोकसभा में और स्टेट के असेंबलीज में उनको मौका मिले. जब उन्हीं का रिप्रेजेंटेशन नहीं है तो कैसा होगा. 690 वुमेन एमपीज अब तक इलेक्ट हुए हैं, जिसमें से मुसलमान सिर्फ 25 हैं और ऐसी 4 लोकसभा थी जहां पर कोई मुस्लिम महिला एमपी इलेक्ट नहीं हुई. 57 में, 62 में, 91 में, 92 में. तो हम ये बोल रहे हैं कि ओबीसी के महिला को और मुस्लिम महिलाओं को रिजर्वेशन मिलना चाहिए.
Well, those were the reactions that we were in fact seeing with regard to the bill. Interestingly enough, now let's move to Canada and India's ties. It is those ties have in fact strained beyond repair to an extent. So the damage is going to be profoundly felt in both the countries, especially with Trudeu making these huge allegations about Indian agents being involved in the killing of Niger. But then there is a huge question about how Canada is shielding a lot of terrorists and criminals with their citizenship. That has also been raised. But the United States, which is a neighbor and close ally of Canada and having a strategic partnership with India, United States has in fact gone ahead and said that take a look at how things are happening in this place. I think we have to look into that particular aspect. So I was looking at that statement that John Kirby was putting out. You were also reading out. Can you give some parts of that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the headline has said that cooperate with the probe, US urges India. The White House National Security Council spokesperson Adrian Watson has said that we are coordinating and consulting with Canada closely. This is a serious matter and we support Canada's ongoing law enforcement. We are also engaging Indian government, and US Ambassador Eric Garsati has also urged India to cooperate with the probe being conducted by the Canada, and he has come out and said that those responsible for Niger's death should be held accountable. So even the US is is deeply concerned, and they are not in support, they are not favoring Canada as of now directly, but they just want to get to the crux of the matter. They are urging India to cooperate with them. He is saying that those responsible should be held accountable. Hope traditional friends and partners can cooperate to get to the bottom of it. So US is coming out as a peace negotiator between India and Canada and is saying that, please guys cooperate with each other. Let's do a proper investigation of the matter. Let's get to the bottom of this and, let's talk about what is happening actually. So it's good that US is not taking a strong side right now, but they are also supporting the investigation. They're saying that let's if India has done nothing wrong and if Trudeau's allegation are actually true or not true, let's find it out. Let's we request the India to cooperate with it and let's end this matter peacefully. And Trudeau also, although he made allegations like he came out and he said that we are expelling the Indian diplomat because we think there are links, and then next day he came out and he said that we are not trying to provoke anything, we don't want this matter to escalate.
Because the fact remains is that Trudeau, being from the left liberal, or the liberals as they were called, is dependent on the votes of the ethnic minorities, and so he cannot let a constituency go, and he's going to face elections in the next year itself. So it is quite a kind of a catch-22 situation that he's in and Canada is in. But let's listen into what the US diplomat had to say on this. I think we have Eric White. Let's take a look at it.
Definitely.
Canada is a dear friend, partner, ally, trading partner, and happens to be our northern neighbor. We care deeply for Canada, just as we care deeply for India and Indians. And I think that moments like this don't define a relationship, but they certainly can slow down progress. And they're gut checks for everybody to say, how do we interact with each other? What do we stand for? How do we enforce ideas like sovereignty and international law? And what are our responsibilities to one another? So, you know, and I'm sure somebody's going to ask the question, so let me just kind of say more of a statement that, you know, obviously, any allegations like this should be troubling to anyone. But with an active criminal investigation, I hope that we can make sure that perpetrators are brought to justice and that we can all allow the space for that information and that investigation to occur before anybody leaps to judgment. And to me, that's the most important role I think each one of us can play. Sovereignty is a very important principle. As you've heard our National Security Council spokesperson, our State Department spokesperson, White House spokesperson say, we've been in regular communication. I'm the son of a prosecutor, so I know when there are criminal investigations, it's best to leave things at that until we know more information.
So you have Garcetti's statement there, and also I'll just read out what John Kirby was, giving out details when he was asked about that particular aspect. So he said, we believe fully transparent, comprehensive investigation is the right approach to what we can call how exactly what happened, and of course we encourage India to cooperate with that. Then he also was asked that whether, the Five Eyes intelligence sharing partnership that they have with Canada knew what the allegations were based on. Kirby said like this, he said, in terms of the fallout, if the allegations were true, Kirby said once the facts were available, you can start to look at recommendations or behaviors you might want to pursue. Quite ambiguous about it. The fact remains is that the US also knows what is national interest. It has pursued terrorists across its borders. They've gone all the way to Afghanistan, half the world around. They have operations, covert operations that they do carry for their country's interests. But of course, they understand probably what we are talking about. The US is going to stay in touch with both the countries, and they are trying to probably play that mediator role, is what we understand. So it looks like they're saying cooperate with the investigation. Let's find out what is exactly happening. But that doesn't stop at that. Now, these are very serious allegations. They have said that, government agents are involved. But the fact remains over here is that is Khalistani is Canada Khalistan now? Because Canada's institutions as a country, you have sympathizers of Khalistan infiltrating Canada's institutions. They have a hold on their Prime Minister, Trudeu, who is hiding behind the fact that, these people have Canadian citizenship and therefore they have freedom of speech. But your Canadian citizen is asking for violence against India. You have people who've come and openly made statements of violence against its diplomats, its people, and also attacks to be carried out on them. And they even threaten asking them to leave your Canada. So one Canadian citizen is asking another Canadian citizen to leave the country. A serious allegation that is also that needs to be leveled and spoken about when it comes to Canada. So has Canada given way to Khalistani sympathizers to take over their institutions of their country that negotiate with the world to actually put out their propaganda? That's the big question that they should be asking.
Exactly, and you're definitely right without saying that, why is Canada shielding? Why is Canada becoming a hub for terrorists? Why is Canada becoming a hub for Khalistani activities? Because, when we think about it, I don't first of all, it was so confusing to me. Why is Trudeau defending Sikh so much? But then when you read about it, there are 18 MPs who are Sikh in the Canadian Assembly. So, they hold a political power there. Now then we have Punjabi, the third most, spoken language in Canada as well. So the influence, whether it's culture, whether it's political, it's at a large impact. It has a large impact on the Canadian politics, on the Canadian culture. And I get it that Trudeau is trying to defend, his electoral gains. He's trying to defend his political interest at this point. But my question to, Trudeau would be that what if instead of a Khalistani terrorist, we were talking about an ISIS agent who was, doing anti-USA activities and was hiding in Canada by saying that I am a Canadian citizen? Would Trudeau be defending him as well? So, these are some semantics that I think that, Trudeau really needs to figure it out, because this is not how it's going to work. Because you are defending a terrorist there who is going out there and doing anti-India activities. countries, and then you have diplomatic relations with the country, and now you're portraying the country as somebody who, like we tried to kill, or we are planning a murder of somebody, or Canadian citizen.
And in fact, India has raised those concerns. It's saying that Canada loved Niger's citizenship when India demanded his arrest.
Yeah.
This is the Tribune's report. The long pending citizenship application of Hardeep Singh Niger was okayed by Canada within months after Red Corner notice RCN was issued against them. Canada needs to, in fact, explain why a person with an RCN notice has been given citizenship. So, acting on the RCN, which is issued through Interpol, a country has to arrest the accused and deport him or her. However, Canada did the exact opposite.
Yeah, and
today you're preaching about, trying to put in these allegations. You have invited these people there, and they are using your country's institutions.
Yeah.
They are souring your country's relationship with the world's 5th largest economy. 13 billion is what the kind of trade that we have with Canada. Canadian companies have been working in India. Indian investments have also been moving into Canada. It's going to hurt you. It's going to hurt you more than what is going to hurt us.
Yeah, they have to think about these allegations, and it's just not the, the India is obviously questioning them, and the India is giving a tit for tat move. You expel our diplomat, we are going to expel you issue a travel advisory, we are going to issue an advisory. But Trudeau is also facing criticism within his own country as well. The opposition leader Pierre, who came out and he said that, it's high time now that, Trudeau is saying on Monday also, while addressing the House of Commons, he came out and he said that we have credible claims, we had credible evidence against India, we are going to investigate them. So the opposition leader came out and said that even you forget about India, even we as Canadian citizens don't know what the facts are. So it's high time, dude, you need to come clean with all the facts, so that Canadian citizen we can also make a judgment that what is happening with the country. Why are we really sheltering terrorists? Are we really not? Is India really actually?
I think Canada should ask that question.
Yeah.
To whom have they given? Are these citizens in Canada who raised Khalistani issue, are they loyal citizens of Canada, or are they actually dreaming about using the citizenship of Canada for their imagined country of Khalistan? Is that the issue? If that is the case, they are not loyal to Canada.
Definitely.
They are using your institutions. They are actually moving in and they are sabotaging your relationship with another country. So you have to be looking into those aspects. Interestingly, one more small statement before we move on. Niger regularly met Canadian intel officials, is what his son has been saying, that the son of slain terrorist Hardeep Singh Niger has told the Canadian media that his father regularly met with Canadian intelligence officials in the months before he was shot dead in June. Balraj Singh Niger, 21, said his father met with Canadian security intelligence services once or twice a week, including 1 or 2 days before the June 18 murder, is what he said.
Yeah, the problem that we had with Pakistan is now going to start with Canada, that stop funding and sheltering terrorists.
Especially Khalistani elements. I mean,
Yeah,
and this doesn't happen with Justin Trudeau. Trudeau's father, Pierre Trudeau, also. There were times when Indira Gandhi did raise the issue about Khalistani extremists in Canada, and she got a cold shoulder at that time also. So Canada has a history, and I don't think so Canada fully understands what is happening to their citizens. You giving citizenship is fine. The question is, are those citizenship coming citizens taking over your country's political institutions and using it for their vested interests, where their vested interests to push their agenda? If that is the case, your country is being taken over by extremists. So, in fact, keeping it that, we'll just in fact get you one of the aspects of this further also. But now to our big show that you can look forward to every day at 10 p.m. and again at 3 p.m. the next day. The Duologue series starts on Connected Television from September 22nd. Here's a sneak peek as what Duologue is.
Do you have a very simple SOP? If you put filth at the mango tree's root, it becomes sweet mango. Spokesperson like Sania Mirza written about more than the women's cricketer.
Journalist, for some reason, doesn't like an athlete. The narrative is very different.
So why have people been so much enticed to come and take over your businesses?
लड़की सुंदर होती है तो उसके पीछे बहुत लड़के आते हैं.
To us normal people, the doctor is somewhere in between us and the God.
When a patient's mother touches my feet, begging to save her child's life, I don't feel empowered. I feel humiliated.
Is it fair to call you an Indophile?
Very much so.
What about China?
A local problem is a global problem.
Suppose if you had donned the seat of the chairman, maybe by now Oxford or Cambridge would have had chairwoman as a legitimate English word.
She is the most qualified. Giving good value system to children was more important than career.
How do you deal with success and failure?
First thing is to clearly know what you want in life.
Who is Lutyens Media?
It is a bunch of people.
What has Khan Market got to do about it?
Just a function of its location.
Duologue with Barun Das, world premiere on Connected TV from September 22nd to 29th at 10 p.m. Only on News9 Live, India's first and only digital exclusive English news stream for Connected TV, supported by Alliance Broadband.
Well, moving on, especially from Canada, Nancy, another big issue that is being raised in a foreign country as well. British MP raises Manipur issue in House of Commons.
Yeah.
The violence in Manipur was raised during the backbench business debate in the House of Commons on Tuesday, with one British MP describing it as silent attack on Christians in India. Democratic Unionist Party MP Jim Shannon repeatedly asked UK Minister for Indo-Pacific Anne Marie during the debate on freedom of religion and belief in Westminster Hall whether UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak had raised the violence in Manipur in any formal discussions with the Indian government during his trip to New Delhi for the G20 summit. He also wanted to know whether Annie Marie would raise with her Indian counterparts the issue of access to Manipur for journalists and human rights monitors. There are big issues in India, and if our Prime Minister does not ask those questions when he's in India, there is something seriously wrong, is what Shannon has said.
Yeah.
The events in Manipur might be classed as originating in tribal and ethnic tensions, but the Manipur violence has silently been an attack on Christians in India. It is striking that local police and state government sat by the arse and destroyed the properties, homes and lives of minority and religious groups. Recently, we did have that statistics coming out about how homes were destroyed, religious places were destroyed when it came to this thing, and we did see how in the British Parliament they have taken that. I think it is one of those backbenches business to say, those question hour sessions when some of these issues are being raised, and you have the British MP raising this question as such. But Manipur is something of a worry, isn't it? We have not seen the violence coming down. We have seen horrible statistics, however, coming every other day, and still there is this huge concern of how things can pan out in Manipur. Lots of guns are on the street. The forces are trying to control them in a lot of ways, but then the internal bickering between the forces and the big divide that's happened between the Meiteis and the Cookies, that is a big concern. So again, raised in a foreign country about what's happening in India, especially in Manipur.
Yeah, Varghese, when we have been following the Manipur, issue, at the start it was a Manipur issue, then it became a national issue, and now it has become an international issue as well, because people all around the country are talking about it, and the kind of incidents that are being reported is just disheartening to see. I mean, a couple days ago we saw an army jawan who was dragged from his home while he was on leave at gunpoint, and then he was found dead. And he was shot in head, and the only witness to that incident was his 10-year-old son. So I mean, these kind of incidents, these are becoming the new normal for Manipur, and it's concerning, because the government really needs to try to involve to get at the crux of it. And I think the only solution and the way that we can control is that government really needs to probe an investigation into finding out that where are these illegal arms and ammunitions coming from. How are you going to stop this illegal supply of ammunitions and arms, because this is something that is causing the violence at the first place, and these ethnic violence, they are getting out of hand. Manipur's, we have been asking this question for, I don't know, for 3 months now, that when are we going to, when normalcy is going to return to Manipur, how are they going to pan out, because now the drift is the divide is so deepened, the crack is so deepened that now it's impossible, it seems impossible that how are you going to get the communities, especially the Meitei and Kuki community to sit down and to have, you know, peaceful talk. How are they going to negotiate? What are the terms going to be now? Because the situation is already out of hand.
Well, also Downing Street has pointed to the UK readout of Prime Minister's meeting with which is Rishi Sunak's meeting with Prime Minister Modi, which does not mention Manipur. And Nancy, another thing is that Manipur is an internal issue of India. It is an internal matter of India, and I think it should be left at that. We know how best to govern which part of our country, and we do not require foreign interference on that. However, the situation in Manipur is concerning, and of course the whole of India is concerned about what's happening in Manipur. The government is also concerned about it. They're trying to bring in some kind of relief to the area. They're trying to bring some kind of normalcy to the area. They have been trying to do it. You had Home Minister Amit Shah visiting the place. You had many other officers being completely changed overnight just to ensure that some kind of movement towards peace is there. There have been talks, back channel talks being initiated between the Cookies as well as the Meiteis, but nothing fruitful has come out till now because the violence has been very, very much there, and it's going to be a very big divide to overcome. But the violence has continued. But at the same time, I think when it comes to our matters, we are no longer a colony. We are an independent, confident country, and we know how to deal with it. And of course, in your country, you can raise that concern about it, but it is an internal matter of India. So, well, that was about Manipur that we were, in fact, looking at. Next, let us, in fact, take a look at how, let's go towards a little bit on Chandrayaan. That lunar day is coming again. And for me, I think that is one big aspect of it that we should be looking at, because when it comes to Pragyan and whether Vikram will wake up from that lunar sleep is what everybody is looking at. One lunar day is 14 Earth days. So, I mean, are you excited? I hope and I keep my fingers crossed that, Pragyan does wake up and some more of that stuff is done, some more of that scientific progress that we would like to have, and some more of the scientific experiments is actually carried out. Are you excited for that?
I'm definitely excited because, after the success of Chandrayaan 3 and when they said that they are moving on to Aditya L1, and we have been following that as well, and it is also, giving us scientific data through the STEPS technology. But I'm actually really excited to, to see more of what, information we can get, what more visuals we can get of the Pragyan, of the rover or of the Vikram lander. And here, they have said that in deep sleep on moon, lander and rover to get ISRO wake up nudge, that ISRO is going to try to activate the lander, but the ISRO official has said that ground station will try and revive the modules and onboard instruments on Thursday or Friday. Once the optimum sunshine, the chances of revival are not very high, but it is not a hopeless situation either, the official said, addressing that it is possible. So they are trying to, figure it out. They are trying to, get them, wake them up. But it is going to be a difficult task for them as well, because they wanted it to, they set it to the sleep mode because they wanted to extend the lifespan of the rover and the lander. But now it's time for them to wake up and give us some more information. So I think they're going to do their best, and let's fingers are crossed. And I am really looking forward to it because I really want to see, more development, more information about the, darker side of the moon. So that is going to be one interesting development with, Aditya L1 also, giving us some good news back to back. They have completed its maneuvers. Now it started collecting scientific data as well, and it's going to reach that L1 point. So I think, India is really moving forward with the space explorations.
Well, it is going to be quite interesting and exciting. Let's see what is going to be that aspect of it. I'm also waiting for, some kind of a response from that rover. But moving ahead, Nancy, we are taking something very serious over here. We're talking about a 7-judge bench to hear a verdict that was given way back in the 1990s. Okay, and this is with regard to the cash for votes. That particular judgment has come up for a kind of an analysis again, or trying to reanalyze what actually happened. From a 5-judge bench, it is now going to a 7-judge bench for hearing. I'll just read out this aspect of it. The Hindustan Times has covered it in their copy as well. in March 2019, a 3-judge bench referred the appeal to a 5-judge bench as it involved the interpretation of a 1998 decision. So the court is trying to visit a judgment they had given in 1998, all right? Now, the Supreme Court on Wednesday had agreed to examine the correctness of a 25-year-old decision by a 5-judge bench, which held that members of parliament accepting bribes and voting or asking questions in the House will enjoy immunity available to legislators under the Constitution.
Yeah.
That is to say that if an elected person is raising a question, taking money from a source, it need not be brought under prosecution.
Yeah.
So that was what the decision they arrived in 1998, and that's what, you know, this cash for votes, when they say whether that person even voted for a particular, you know, bill, after taking cash, they come under a particular immunity. So that is how the 1998 decision was looked at. I think there was a lot of petitions against that particular aspect of re-examining that aspect of that decision. And 2019, it was referred to a 7-judge bench, and now CJ Chandrachud has decided to take up and re-examine that case. So it is going to a 7-judge bench. So it's going to be quite crucial when we look at that aspect of that debate. Now, this bench is going to also be headed by CJI. And we'll have a relook at the 1998 Constitution Bench decision in the PV Narasimha Rao versus State, after the decision was relied upon by a former member of the Jharkhand Assembly, Sita Soren of the Jharkhand Mukti Morcha, who allegedly accepted a bribe from an independent candidate for voting in Rajya Sabha elections in 2012. So this is the background of that story. She sought immunity from being prosecuted for the offence, citing Article 194(2) of the Constitution, which grants immunity to MLAs for any speech made or vote cast in the House. So the provision states that no member of the legislature of a state shall be liable to any proceedings in any court in respect of anything said or any vote given by him in the legislature or any committee thereof. Basically saying that I can vote the way I want, I can claim immunity from this procedure. You cannot ask why I voted or why I raised a speech. So that is the basic aspect of that provision. So the corresponding provision gives immunity to members of the parliament is contained in Article 105(2). So a long time old decision on this, which is being reviewed right now. Now, what the CGI said is this: prima facie, at the stage, we are considering view that correctness of the majority view taken in PV Narasimha Rao case should be considered by a larger bench of 7 judges. So this is an interesting aspect of this particular case. But revisiting a 25-year-old case, a judgment, and especially on this aspect of whether bribery can be shielded, how do you in fact look at it?
I mean, I think the basic crux of the matter is that, you know, the Supreme Court is finally trying to, you know, go back and look and then trying to send the message that legislators are also not above the law. I mean, if they have done something, if they are committing a crime, whether it's
we do, because that gives you immunity, that you know, that particular aspect of it. I think that aspect is what they are trying to
figure out, because you know, you cannot go around and if they have, I was actually we were doing the show, and we did a story also that, you know, the Supreme Court gave a ruling. You know, they were amicus told the Supreme Court that, you know, when a scam, when anybody is convicted, when it's a government servant, he gets suspended, he cannot perform. And when it's a politician, when it's a member of parliament, they have some kind of immunity, and they are only suspended for 6 years, and then they can come back and they can you know, claim their seats again. So that is kind of unfair when it comes to a case when both of them are convicted equally, when both of them have, you know, been proven that they are doing something. Then what is the immunity for? Why are we giving them the immunity? I mean, we get it that we are talking about MPs here, we're talking about ministers here. Anybody can go against and file an FIR. They cannot be take up every case that comes against a public figure. But still, you know, they are not above the law. If we have information about they should be treated as a citizen of the country, not as somebody who's above the law.
The question over here is also about, you know, whether you voting on taking bribe or not, whether it can be shielded to a large extent or not is that question. So anyway, it's a 25-year-old case that they're looking into. Let's see how it works out.
Definitely.
Let's go into this factor. Republic Day guest.
Yeah.
US considering Modi's invite to Biden to be chief guest at Republic Day is what the envoy says. Prime Minister Narendra Modi had invited US President Joe Biden to be the chief guest at the Republic Day celebrations on January 26 next year. US Ambassador Eric Garcetti said here on Wednesday, while the US Congress would be in session at that time, Mr. Garcetti said that the invitation is under consideration. So, Mr. Biden is due to visit India in 2024 for the Quad Summit, however. So, and reports suggest that the government is coordinating with Japanese and Australian governments to try and schedule the Indo-Pacific Quadrilateral Group's meeting at the same time. So, you know, just after the Republic Day celebrations, you go into the Quad meet, and after that, you can in fact go ahead. So, Biden has been here for the G20 meet as well. So, probably he might be the second US president after Obama to be the chief guest at the Republic Day celebrations.
Definitely. I mean, and I was reading about it. I was actually, because you know, the talks have been out that, you know, on Republic Day, India is going to invite all the members of the Quad committee. However, the Eric Garcetti has came out and said that PM Narendra Modi had not mentioned the Quad summit while inviting Biden. So he has invited him just to attend the Republic Day celebration. He is saying that during their bilateral talks on the sidelines of the G20 summit, Prime Minister Modi invited President Biden to visit for January 26. He did not mention the Quad summit during the meeting, as that has to be coordinated. So he's saying that, you know, the Quad summit, we still have to figure it out, but we are still considering the invitation that Biden might visit, you know, on Republic Day. And I think it's very important to see that after G20, especially after G20, whether, you know, India was, you know, strengthening its ties with the global leaders. But I think after G20, you know, the message is so loud and clear that everybody, including, you know, top leaders like US, whether it's UK, everybody, you know, they're so keen to have some kind of bilateral ties, whether it's in defense, whether it's in energy, whether it's in trade. And with the, you know, the launch of the historic economic corridor, the India, Middle East, Europe corridor, I think it's so important that everybody is trying to, you know, have that relationship, have that, they're so keen and enthusiastic to have that, you know, a good bilateral ties with India. I think which was not the case, you know, decades ago, because India was seen as somebody who will outsource the job, who, you know, they are good in maths. That was some stereotypical, you know, image of India. But now that after the G20, and I would say India has really moved up into the global map with the Chandrayaan 3, with everything. So I think this is something interesting to see that, you know, and Biden, I think after his G20 summit, he has gone out and he is appreciating India right and left. Whether it was his trip to Vietnam, whether at UNGA, he's just so excited and he's praising India, he's lauding India's effort. He praised Modi also, that, you know, the Make in India approach that India is going forward to is really inspiring. So it's important to see, and it's good to see that India having such strategic relationship with US.
Talking about strategic relationship, a little change of focus over here. The Portuguese president, Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa, has in fact said that he supports permanent membership of India and Brazil in the United Nations Security Council. He advocates a reformed Security Council while addressing the UNGA. So that is so interesting to come out. Meanwhile, Turkey's President Erdogan has raised the Kashmir issue also in the United Nations, but he has also been supportive of India's permanent membership in the UNSC. So Erdogan has said that it was a matter of pride that India was playing a role in the United Nations Security Council. Meanwhile, the UK Foreign Secretary James Cleverly has called for expansion of the United Nations Security Council, backing India's bid for a permanent membership of the UN body, and also the inclusion of Brazil, Germany and Japan. So when it comes to UNSC, you know, it's been a long time effort on the part of India to find, to say that it doesn't make sense without us, with more than 1 billion people, a country not being represented in the United Nations Security Council. But then the question is, will you be having veto powers or not? Because the P5 are not going to, you know, give veto powers to you. So you might be on that seat, but tokenism is what it looks like without the power to go ahead and help in the process of having a veto power. So India has been asking for veto power, but, you know, Germany has climbed down to an extent, and probably even Japan on that factor of having veto power. But it is a big thing that you have nations like UK who's looking for reform in it. You have Portuguese president coming out and a very important European voice. And, there are other nations saying that it doesn't make sense without India being on the UNSC Council. So they are making these statements at the UNG and, coming in quite clearly saying that India needs to be given that particular aspect of recognition when it comes to the UNSC. So interesting statement coming on that front as well. And I was actually looking at how possible it is for India to get going with that UNSC campaign as such. Now, of course, there is another aspect of our story. NEET PG cutoff has been reduced to 0. You have any details on that?
Yeah, definitely. I was reading about it somewhere. Yeah, here. Health Ministry reduces NEET PG cutoff to 0 percentile for this year. The government on Wednesday reduced it to 0 across categories, making all medical graduates eligible to participate in the counselling process for admission to super specialty courses this year. There are nearly 70,000 PG medical seats across India. Of them, 2,000 to 2,500 seats remains vacant each year because there are no takers. So, we were talking about how these, this entrance exam, they create a pressure among students, and the cutoff is high because the standard of medical education in India is particularly very high.
So now the question is, why are we in fact conducting these? If you
if
want to bring it to 0,
yeah.
why the hell are you even conducting this?
I mean, even this year, after 2 rounds of counselling for NEET PG, many seats are lying vacant. So the argument that they are saying is that there are seats vacant and there is nobody to take because nobody was able to, pass that criteria, pass that eligibility factor. But when you discuss this matter, there are things that this is going to make a joke out of the medical, standard that we have, the education standard that we have to maintain. That if you give it to 0,
and NEET is a very contentious issue in our country. There are a lot of states who want to move out of NEET.
Yeah, and now that you are saying that it's going to get 0, I mean, how is it going to help India, and how are they going to, I think it's going to create a joke out of the medical, medical standard, medical education standard.
What about
that
the
India
students?
Has been,
Students who have been, trying to strive for those good scores so that they can get their choice of, this is for PG, so it will be specialization. So they would be looking for that specialization that they want. They would be burning the midnight oil, and then you're suddenly told that you're just equal with everyone. If a person who has 0 is also eligible to sit in that counselling.
And Verghese is just not who scored 0 marks. It says that after the detailed analyzing of the NEET PG 2023 results, it shows that 0 percentile cutoff means 14 candidates who scored 0 marks are eligible to sit in the counselling, and 13 students who scored negative marks will also qualify, with the lowest getting -40 out of 800. So
-40 has a value.
Yeah. So a person,
this is complete ridiculousness of the entire examination system.
Definitely. I mean, a student who scored good marks out of 800, he might have scored something in 700s, and a student who scored -80 is also being qualified to sit in the counselling process. So we were talking about 2-3 days earlier that the NEET institution that really needs to reduce the pressure out of students, but this is something really extreme. There needs to be some criteria, there needs to be some eligibility factor that comes in, so that students, I mean, it's unfair to the students who are scoring good marks in NEET PG, and then you have a -40 student who scored -40 out of 800 who's going to sit equally. I think that is something problematic, and they need to relook at this decision.
Well, moving away from home again onto an international headline, when it comes to Russia, there has been a big face-off that's happened when it comes to Zelensky making his UN address. He says, strip Russia of its veto power is what Zelensky has said. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Wednesday confronted Russia directly at the United Nations Security Council, denouncing Kremlin's invasion of his country as criminal and urging United Nations to strip Moscow of its veto power is what he has been saying. He went on to say that most of the world recognizes the truth about this war, is what Zelensky said. It is criminal and unprovoked aggression by Russia against our nation aimed at seizing Ukraine's territory and resources. He called on the United Nations to vote to end Russia's veto power on the Security Council. He said that the move would be among wide-ranging reforms at the Security Council that would include permanent representation for developing nations where support for Ukraine has been lukewarm. Veto power in the hands of an aggressor is what has pushed the United Nations to a deadlock. This is what he has in fact made that statement on. So, of course, the Ukraine war is not something that won't, move away from the aspect of it. Meanwhile, there has been statements coming in that the United Nations Security Council chair has told Russia to stop the war as fast as possible because it is affecting the entire Eastern Europe and keeping Europe in this. Let's in fact take a reaction on that aspect as well, especially when it came to the UN chair.
I now give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Antony Blinken, Secretary of State of the United States of America.
Thank you very much. Fights to defend them. For over a year and a half, Russia has shredded the major tenets of the United Nations Charter, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, international humanitarian law, and flouted one Security Council resolution after another. Let's review. It's hard to imagine a country demonstrating more contempt for the United Nations and all that it stands for. This from a country with a permanent seat on this council. President Putin is betting that if he keeps doubling down on the violence, that if he's willing to inflict enough suffering on enough people, the world will cave on its principles and Ukraine will stop defending itself. Third, Russia continues to engage in reckless nuclear saber-rattling, announcing that it's stationing nuclear weapons in Belarus and continuing to use Europe's biggest nuclear power plant and its employees as a shield for its aggression, risking catastrophic consequences. Fourth, Russia is weaponizing hunger. Thanks to the Black Sea Grain Initiative, brokered by the Secretary General and Turkey, approximately 33 million metric tons of grain reached global markets, driving down food prices around the world. Nearly 2/3 of the wheat exported through that deal went to developing countries. Not only did Putin pull out of the deal, but Russia is now mining Ukraine's fields, bombing its ports and rails, burning its silos. As a result,
Росія вбила щонайменше десятки тисяч наших людей та зробила мільйони біженцями, зруйнувавши їхній дім. Світова більшість визнає правду про цю війну. Це злочинна та неспровокована агресія Росії проти нашої нації, що має на меті захоплення території та ресурсів України. Але
Well, it looks like at the moment that we have fairly looked into what the newspapers have been covering as well, and it's been quite interesting to see that a lot is happening on the Indo-Canadian front, on the UNGA front, as well as when it comes to our local politics as well. Women's Reservation Bill, of course, going to be the highlight in the Rajya Sabha today. So stay tuned and watch for that special coverage that is coming at 11 o'clock from the Rajya Sabha. Of course, in the evening, we will have the South Indian and Global Lens as well. But before that, let me in fact talk to you about one important show that's coming on our Connected TV, that is with regards to the duologue, and you can keep watching it. It will be there premiering on our Connected TV as well. It'll be there from September 22nd onwards. You can take a sneak peek at what is available on that aspect as well.
Do you have a very simple SOP?
If you put filth at the mango tree's root, it becomes sweet mango.
Spokesperson like Sania Mirza written about more than the women's cricketer.
Journalist, for some reason, doesn't like an athlete. The narrative is very different.
So why have people been so much enticed to come and take over your businesses?
लड़की सुंदर होती है तो उसके पीछे बहुत लड़के आते हैं.
To us normal people, the doctor is somewhere in between us and